2005. That's the last time the Sacramento Kings won 50 or more games in a season, and they just barely hit that 50-win mark. Can they do it again this season? In fact, should we expect them to break that threshold this season? Kenny Caraway, the KC and D'Lo and KC on ESPN 1320 here in Sacramento, he does. In fact, he thinks this team's win floor is 52 wins. We'll break down why right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all offseason long. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And so many of you who listen to the Locked On Kings podcast are also frequent listeners of D'Lo and KC on ESPN 1320. Now, if you aren't listening to D'Lo and KC, you need to, because they're an unbelievable radio show. In my opinion, the best radio show, not just in Sacramento, the best radio show in maybe the country. They're just, they tackle a bunch of different topics, from great coverage for, of course, the Sacramento Kings, the San Francisco 49ers, just general Sacramento sports, national sports. They even go beyond sports. If you like wrestling, they touch on wrestling stuff. If you like culture and hip hop, they have really good commentary on that as well. D'Lo and KC is a phenomenal show, and I have the opportunity to join them on the show every single week on Thursdays, and it's been tremendous for my career. They've become very close friends of mine over the course of this. So anytime I can have either one of them or both of them here on Locked On Kings, it's a really, really good treat. So we have Kenny Caraway on, because Kenny over the last couple of weeks has been saying with his chest that this Kings team's floor is 52 wins this season. 52 wins. Again, the Sacramento Kings haven't won 50 games since 2005. They won 55 games in 2004, 59 games in 2003, 61 games in 2002, and 55 games in 2001. So Kenny's talking about putting up numbers that only that glory era, golden era Sacramento Kings team has been able to put up. But he's going to break down why for us, why he thinks that 52 win floor is there. I do think the Sacramento Kings team will be a 50-win team. I don't know if I'm ready to say 52-win floor, but hey, KC can say it with his chest, so I don't have to. We'll also talk about just the route for the Kings in the playoffs in the Western Conference. Does it matter how the Kings make the playoffs? So I hope you enjoyed my conversation with my guy, Kenny Caraway. Nice of Kenny Caraway to take a break from NCAA 25 college football. You're on the Locked On Kings podcast. Kenny, before we talk Sacramento Kings, how's the dynasty going? How's the road to glory going? What we doing first?
Man, started off at Fresno State, 3-2, got a big win, big come from behind victory last night at UNLV. We were down 11 with about 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. 2 touchdowns to take the lead with 33 seconds left. The alumni is happy. The locker room is happy. And I'm one of the rising stars in college football right now as a coach. Feel great.
Well, I'm learning very, very quickly that it's a good thing I don't host a football podcast, because I don't know a thing about football. I can't read a defense. I don't know where to go. I average like 2+ picks a game. Game is hard as hell, so I'm just going to wait for NBA 2K to come out. But Kenny Caraway, nice enough to join us here on the Locked On Kings podcast. KC, I brought you on for a number of reasons. One, because you're amazing. Number two is you've had a number in your mind. You've had a number of wins. You've been saying 52 win floor. Is that correct for the Sacramento Kings team? What got you feeling like this Kings team minimum is going to be a 52 win team?
Well, I looked at the last 2 seasons, to be honest with you. They got 48 wins 2 years ago with being team one, as I affectionately call them. And, they didn't have any injuries. Things went well, but there were some hiccups, right? Like they won 48. They started off the season 0-4. And then the last 3 games of the season, they basically punted because of the seeding situation and getting ready for the playoffs. So you can look at that team really as a 50 to 51 win team. Now, some people will say that was their ceiling. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're wrong. I don't know. But I looked at that situation. I looked at them as possibly a 50-win team. Last year, they win 46 games, and they had to deal with some adversity with injuries. They had to deal with Malik Monk going down. They had to deal with De'Aaron Fox going down. They had to deal with Trey Lyles not starting the season with them. So there was some adversity there. And then they had, obviously, Matt, a lot of situations where they blew, 4 20-point leads throughout the season. Lost to the 4 worst teams in the league last year. They still won 46. So I look at that situation where say you take just with them alone, with no changes to this team, you halving that up, right? Say they win 2 of those games against the 4 worst teams in the league. Say they win 2 of those games where they were up by 20 in the 4th quarter or something like that. That's 4 more wins right there. That's 50. And now you got a situation where DeMar DeRozan is a clear upgrade from what you had with Harrison Barnes. He's got to be worth 2 to 3 wins himself. That's the KC math. That's how we get to a floor of 52. I really just think this team is a really good team. And it's going to be one of those situations like it was 2 years ago, where winning is the most important thing in that building. And they're going to take every single game seriously. And I think that's what helped them a lot 2 years ago, is they really just cared more than anybody else about the regular season. And I see them getting back to that in this upcoming season.
For me, the key to breaking that 50-win threshold, which this Kings team has not done in a long time, unlocking that threshold, I think, comes from the middle of the schedule. And what I mean by that is, I know this team can start strong. I know this team can finish strong. And I'm not just talking about the team. I'm mainly talking about their main guys, right? Like De'Aaron Fox is the first guy to come to mind. Saw De'Aaron averaging 30-plus points per game to start last season. We know when it comes playoff time, De'Aaron Fox can ball out. But what are we doing in January? What are we doing in February? What are we doing in early March on a Wednesday night when Detroit comes to town? Or what are we doing in Charlotte in February, right? That's still an area that this team runs into, to where the term that's used, and sometimes it's overused, but I think it carries some weight to it, like playing to the level of your competition, right? Can the Sacramento Kings be the same consistent team from game 1 to game 82? Now, you're going to deal with injuries. You're going to deal with bad nights. You're going to have bad shooting nights. Things happen, right? It's the NBA. Great teams lose to bad teams all the time. The Boston Celtics had some very questionable losses last season. It happens to everybody. Yeah. But overall, consistently, can we look at a Pistons game in January, or a Charlotte game in February, or a Portland Trailblazers game in March, and not be concerned or not be nervous about losing that night? That might be honestly the next step for this Kings team, is just showing, whoever we play, it don't matter. We're going to play the exact same way.
That's really what it comes down to. You know what I mean? That is the difference between 45 and 50 wins, in my opinion, for this team. Being able to stay focused, stay locked in every single night, no matter who the opponent is. And I think a guy like DeMar DeRozan is really going to help with that. I know Harrison Barnes was a leader in that locker room. We all love Harrison for that, his leadership, the things that he brought to the table. But sometimes his game didn't match up with the leadership he provided. Now with somebody like DeMar DeRozan, this is a guy that not only can tell you, hey, stay focused, stay locked in, let's go to work, but he can do that same thing and be the one that's going to work, be the one that's getting 25 to 30 points on a night where he sees the team may potentially be lagging. De'Aaron Fox is growing every single year. He's a guy that showed signs of that this past year and can do those same things. Malik Monk, obviously, Domantas Sabonis, obviously. And then the big key is we don't know what we're going to get from Keegan Murray. And I say that not in like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation, but he's already a good player. What if he takes a leap and continues to grow with his development as an NBA player? So I look at those things, and you're 100% right, Matt. If you got a situation where you've got Washington coming to town, take care of business. You go to Washington, take care of business. Charlotte, Detroit, all these teams are the same thing. I think this year they'll be a little bit more locked in on taking care of business with those things than they were last year. Last year, they just, in those situations, they were just kind of stuck in the mud. I don't think it was want to. I don't think that they weren't aware of the situation. They were just a little snake bitten last year in those situations, and they just couldn't get out of their own way. It's one of those things in sports and with team sports that you see it, you just can't explain why it happens or how to keep it happening. I think that's what happened a lot of the times last year. I don't think that'll be the case this year.
This is probably more personal preference, but I don't know, maybe there's some philosophy to it. What do you think is more important towards achieving that 50-win goal? Long win streaks or limiting or no losing streaks, like a loss here and there, or like maybe the most you string together is 2 losses in a row, but avoiding those 3, 4, 5 straight loss skids?
Man, it feels like it would be avoiding losing 3 in a row. What was it 2 years ago where they didn't lose 3 in a row until like the playoffs?
They lost 3 in a row to start the season, and then they lost 3 in a row at the very, very end of the year, like you said, when they punted. I believe that's what it was.
Yeah, and it seems like that's the formula for success, to get those wins, to accumulate those wins. Now, you could be a situation like I think it was the Atlanta Hawks from 3 years ago, where they never were. It's crazy. They were never one game over. They were never more than one game over or more than one game under 500, like all year. Like they just kind of waffled every other game in the win-loss, win-win, loss-loss, or something like that. You don't want that. But to the essence of your question, I would say avoiding the losing streaks, because a 3-4 game winning streak isn't necessarily a long winning streak. But if you can put that together 7 times throughout the season and avoid losing 3 in a row at any point during the season, that's how you're going to rack up your wins to get 50-50 plus wins. So I would go with avoiding the losing streak.
Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Now, Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. So if you're looking to kill your time over the course of this summer, still get your sports in while we're waiting for basketball to return, getting your Major League Baseball tickets, going to seeing the Giants play or the A's play or whoever you're interested in playing on Game Time is the way to go. But look, Game Time needs to be your ticket marketplace for whatever you're going to, whether it's Sacramento Kings basketball, an MLB baseball game, NFL football, college sports, even outside of sports, concerts, whether it's a small concert or a massive stadium show, comedy shows, theatrical productions. It does not matter. Game Time's got tickets for it, and they've got the best tickets for it because they have last-minute deals that can't be beat. You actually get rewarded up to 60% off buying tickets for events last minute. Yeah, normally procrastination isn't necessarily a good thing, but look, life gets in the way, right? Sometimes we don't know if we're going to be able to go to a game or not, or maybe we make a last minute decision. Hey, my night is free. Kings are playing tonight. I'm going to head down there. Let me get some tickets. Well, you know what? Game Time is going to get you the best tickets possible. They have the Game Time lowest price guarantee. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets in the same area, same row, at a better spot. They also have zone deals where you can kind of pick a zone, have an idea of where you'd like to see, and Game Time will select the seats for you at the best possible price you're going to get. My favorite feature that Game Time has, it's so simple but so wonderful, it's called their all-in pricing. You know exactly what you're paying, right? You're not going to get hit by these hidden fees when it shows you your seat. And by the way, they have the best seat views you're going to find anywhere else. You're going to know exactly what your view is from your seat. Now, it's just a ballpark estimate, but you see your tickets, or you see the zones, and you see, like, let's say $55 for each ticket. That's what it is. $55 for each ticket. There's no massive like processing fees or service fees or anything that's slapped onto the end of it. As long as you have their all-in pricing toggled on, you'll know exactly what you are going to pay right away. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, go to Game Time and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We're going to be spoiled as fans, just of basketball, not just the Sacramento Kings this season, because, I mean, the Western Conference is just so dang good that every single night the Kings take the floor, it's going to be must watch, right? And it's going to be like every single game is going to carry a certain amount of weight to it. And we could be looking at game 3 against the Los Angeles Clippers, and that game could have significant repercussions for playoffs come April. It's crazy how the Western Conference is. So with that 52 win floor in mind, let's say they hit that. Let's say they win 52. Where do you think that puts Sacramento in the standings in the Western Conference? Do you expect the West to be even better, around the same, or maybe slightly worse?
I expect the West to be a little better, but there's some wild cards in there, right? So yeah, I think teams like San Antonio is going to be a little bit better. I think Memphis is going to be a little bit better. But I think the Warriors are going to potentially be worse. Now, I'm not necessarily predicting them to fall out of the play-in, which is what that would mean. But, I mean, we got to look at what it is. They finished 10th last year. I think they did not have a good offseason. I didn't think they improved their team this offseason. So they're in danger of falling out of the playoff situation, out of the play-in situation. I look at a team like the Clippers. I think they might nosedive. They were the 4th seed last year. And without Paul George, and who knows what you're getting from Kawhi Leonard, I think they might nosedive in the standings. Lakers, not sure what they got going on either. So you look at the Western Conference, and I think it's a little better, but it's about the same because you got teams taking other teams' place and things of that nature. Where 52 wins gets the Kings potentially in the seedings, I'm going to be conservative in this respect, and I'll say probably the 4th seed. I got my eye on Denver, though. Denver is a team that I think has gotten worse the last 2 seasons. And I don't think they'll fall out of the top 6, but a lot of people pencil them in to be in a top 3 team or a top 4 team or something like that. And this could be the year where they struggle a little bit. The losses of Bruce Brown and KCP in back-to-back years may be something that catches up with them. Guys like Brown and the other young guy they had last year, they weren't necessarily ready last year to step up and take the team to the same championship level that they were before. We'll see if they're able to do it this year. So I got my eye on Denver, but I'm going to show them respect. And I'm going to say 52 wins would get the Kings probably a 4th seed.
A lot of people are breaking the Western Conference up into tiers, and I don't really like looking at all 15 teams. I don't really expect any team to be bad necessarily. Every single team in the West has good players, even going down to the bottom of the Portland Trailblazers, the San Antonio Spurs, the Memphis Grizzlies should have John Morant all season. We'll see. But unless he does something else stupid, but they should have John Morant, so they should be better. So you mentioned some of the teams that are kind of in the middle of the pack that might drop off because of age, like the Warriors or the Lakers. But a lot of people breaking the West up into tiers. They have the elite tier at the very top, which is probably OKC, probably Minnesota, although I don't know if one season of being at the top is enough to solidify them there. Maybe Denver's in there. Maybe the Dallas Mavericks are in there. And then there's the tier underneath it, which is probably like what you're talking about, kind of that 4th, 5th, 6th range. How many teams do you think are in that tier? Because if you obviously you believe Sacramento should be in that tier with being in that group. But how many other teams do you think are right in that, not quite elite, but should be right there conversation in the West?
Right now, I'm looking at, obviously, the Kings. I still am showing a little more respect than most of Phoenix. They had a lot of injuries last year as well. But at the same time, KD played all year as well. So new coach, Mike Budenholzer, I think he's better than Frank Vogel. And they got the talent, you know what I mean? If I was a Phoenix Suns fan, if we were on Locked On Suns, I can make the argument that we dealt with a bunch of injuries last year and still got to the 6th seed. You know what I'm saying? So what if everybody's a little bit more healthy this year? We could be in that 4 or 5 range. So I'll show them a little bit of reverence and put them in that slot as well. After that, you know, I really just think I think Denver's in that slot too, right? Like I think a lot of people are quick to put Denver up there with Minnesota and Oklahoma City. I'm not. So my 3 would really be Denver, Sacramento, Phoenix in that next tier. And then you got some question marks with the Lakers, with the Clippers, with Memphis, with the Pelicans, things of that nature. Maybe I'd put the Pelicans in there with the Kings as well, especially because they're not trading Brandon Ingram, but they're losing Valanciunas. I don't know what they're going to do in the middle, and they're relying on the help of Zion Williamson. But out of the respect of beating the hell out of the Kings 6 times last year, I guess I will go ahead and put them in that tier. But I look at those top 2 as being certified and verified. And then you've got the Nuggets, the Kings, the Suns, the Pelicans, those teams. Some would even put the Lakers in that group as well. of teams that, they can go either way. They could have a really, really big regular season and get a high seeding, or they could be fighting for the play-in.
You think the days of the Pelican kryptonite, you think that's done now with the moves that the Kings have made this offseason, the addition of DeMar DeRozan? Because one of the major reasons, if not the main reason why I felt the Kings struggled against New Orleans so much last season was because of the lack of size to match the overall length and athleticism of that Pelicans team. You added DeMar DeRozan, who's fantastic, but you traded one of your bigger guys away in Harrison Barnes in order to get that done. So this team might still lack a little bit in the length and athleticism department, although they've gotten significantly better, no question in my mind. You think the days of losing to the Pelicans a lot is over?
Absolutely, without a doubt. Those days are done. I can guarantee you that's over. And one of the things that I look at is much like playing these sorry teams, quote unquote sorry teams, and struggling against them, but playing the defending champions and beating them 3 out of 4 times. Just weird setups, right? Just weird setups last year. And that was part of it. Losing to the Pelicans 6 times was part of it. I'm not saying that they're clearly better than the Pelicans last year or anything else like that, but hell, at least go 4-2 or 2-4 or whatever the case may be, 1-5. To lose 6 times, that's a little bit of an anomaly. So I think that changes a little bit as well. But also one of the things that I think they struggled with, not only with the Pelicans, but just in general last year, is shot creation from the roster. It was De'Aaron Fox, it was Malik Monk, and after that, it was really everybody just spotting up for threes. They didn't have anybody else that could create their own shot, that could get to the bucket, that could get to the foul line. When they get to the foul line, make the free throws. They didn't have a lot of that last year, and just bringing in DeMar DeRozan just adds another element to this roster and makes them a little bit more dynamic on the offensive end and a little less predictable, right? So we saw once Malik Monk went down, people were just locking in on Fox, and he was the one creator at that point. Well, now, whether it's down with injury, whether it's substitution, I think at all times they're going to have at least 2 guys that can create their own shot, get to the bucket, 3-level scores, can get to the foul line. And I think that's just going to help them so much against teams like New Orleans and just open up that offense and make them even more dynamic.
Every Kings fan has their own measurement of failure, and I think the only true failure that we've gotten from the Sacramento Kings themselves was from Monte McNair. I think he said it on draft night. He said our goal is to make the playoffs. Anything less is unacceptable. So this team obviously has the postseason insights. I know Mike Brown and De'Aaron Fox and others are going to say more than that, right? It's not just making the playoffs, it's winning a playoff series or making an extended playoff run. Hell, Mike will probably bring up competing for a championship again, because if you're not going for that, then what the hell's the point? So measuring failure is different for different people. I think we all have the base understanding of, if this Kings team misses the playoffs again, like, heads might roll. Like we're talking about some pretty serious repercussions if that happens again, regardless of how good the Western Conference is. But Kenny, does it matter how the Kings make the playoffs? Let's say they end up back in the play-in again, but maybe they're the 6th seed and they win their first play-in game and are right in and playing whoever or whoever the 4th or 3rd seed is. Does it matter how the Sacramento Kings the 7th seed would be the play-in tournament? Does it matter how the Sacramento Kings make it in your mind?
I mean, now we have these discussions on July 24th. And like I said, I got a 4-hour daily radio show with a chatty house and callers who were like, no, it has to be this way and all this other stuff. I can unequivocally say right now, if the Kings are the 7th or 8th seed and they get into the playoffs, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'll even go a step further. Say they were a 7th or 8th seed, had to play in the play-in game, got into the playoffs as the 7th seed, beat the 2 seed, and won a round in the playoffs. Do you think anybody would care how they got there? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So the goal, much like I remember, I think you were on the show guest hosting with me this summer after they broke the playoff drought. And we talked about this past year that happened that following year. And it was like, look, man, I know everybody, no, we got to win a round. No, we need to win 2 rounds. Get back to the playoffs. You're building something here. You're building something that you're hoping is going to last for, 7, 8, 9 years. It's not going to be make the playoffs 1 year then NBA Finals. It's not going to be miss the playoffs, then NBA Finals. There's going to be steps to it. I go back to those early 2000 Kings. They were the AC twice. They were the AC twice and lost in the first round twice before they lost in the second round, before they got to the Western Conference Finals. It is a process a lot of the times in the NBA. And no pun intended, you got to trust the process in this situation. So this year, the biggest thing for me is get back into the playoffs. Establish yourself as a certified, verified playoff team once again. I think they kind of took a step back last year in the process by not making the playoffs. So this typically would have been the year where it was like, all right, you need to win you a round. So if people want to say, hey, win a round, that's fine too. But how you get into the playoffs, it doesn't matter. Not at all to me. Not at all.
I asked your colleague, your boy D'Lo, Damian Barling on Locked On Kings last week. This question, I'll ask you the same thing. Has everything to do with, like, in a perfect world, the Kings would be top 10, top 15 in both offense and defense. Last year, the defense got significantly better to end the season. The offense took a dip from where they were 2 seasons ago. I spoke with an NBA assistant coach who told me that he believes that DeMar DeRozan addresses the biggest weakness of that Sacramento Kings offense from 2 seasons ago when they were virtually unstoppable. So when you're looking at like prioritizing one over the other, because I think it was clear that the Kings were prioritizing defensive improvement last season, and Mike let it known like, hey, I'm okay taking a few steps back offensively if it means improvement defensively. And unfortunately, we didn't see that improvement till late in the season, and the offense never looked good the entire year. In your mind, you could pick one coming out of the gate that the Sacramento Kings are back to normal on. They're back to that physical defense that they ended last season, or they're back to the high-powered offense from 2 seasons ago. I think I know where you're going. Is it the offense? Is that what the Kings need to get back?
Now, Matt George, you're an excellent host. You've got a job to do. You have to lay out, the scenario for maybe first-time listeners or whatever the case may be. But Matt George, how long have you known me now? About 3 or 4 years? How many times have we had this conversation? Do you need to ask this question to me? You know where I'm leaning. Now, look, for those that have not heard my explanation on this, have not heard what I have to say, I will explain it a little bit. It's the offense. And it's really specific to this team because, believe it or not, everybody, I coach youth basketball. I am a very locked in defensive coach. It's like, you got to defend. You have to find. I'm probably Mike Brown with these 10 and 11-year-olds, right? Like, it's about the defense. But that's because I'm trying to install something in them that'll last forever. With these guys in the NBA, and specifically with this Kings team, these guys kind of are who they are. And you have to lean in to what the strength is on this roster. And yes, in an ideal world, I like for them to be a lockdown defensive team. But I don't know if they have that personnel. And especially when you look at what they do great. These guys are some great dynamic scorers. You want to lean into that. So I would prefer for this particular group to lean into that offense, to be a top 5 offense in the league, because I believe that they'll be able to defend well enough to stave off anything that's going on. And with Mike Brown, just by nature, they'll get better as the season goes along. I always go back to the playoff series. While they weren't a great defensive team, statistically, by the time they got to the playoffs, they had everything kind of drilled into their head about what they need to do defensively and being physical by Mike Brown all year long, that they were ready for that in the playoffs. I'm a broken record with it. They didn't lose that series because they didn't play defense. Obviously, I know Steph Curry had 50 in Game 7, but you look at the whole totality of that series, they didn't lose because they didn't defend. Golden State was looking at them like, yo, these guys are too physical. This isn't fair, writing letters, all this other stuff. They were ready to play on the defensive end. Their offense ended up failing them in that series. I think that wouldn't happen if they got into a playoff series again, and they'll be more prepared. Then you got guys that outside of DeRozan, who's a seasoned vet, who would know how to handle the postseason. You got guys that would be stepping in for the second time now into a playoff series, know what to expect, know the defensive intensity that needs to be brought, and match that. So I think that's something that you can change once you get into a playoff setting. I don't know if you can change your offense once you get into a playoff setting. I would want that humming all season long, and that's why I will lean towards that.
Finally, Casey, I know you're a competitive guy. You want to win everything. You want the Sacramento Kings to win everything. How much you prioritize in the in-season tournament, aka the Emirates NBA Cup? I haven't actually talked about this on the podcast yet, but the Kings got their group. We don't know when they're going to be playing necessarily, but they got their group, West Group A. They're with the T-Wolves, the Clippers, the Rockets, the Trailblazers, and then, of course, the Sacramento Kings. Out of all the West groups, I think the Kings got the best group out of them. There's some brutal groups in there. And the Kings don't have to play the New Orleans Pelicans in that group, thank God. Hopefully they don't. Hopefully they don't get screwed by the draw if they are eliminated from the play-in tournament again, and then they have to play a playoff team an extra time when everybody else gets to play the freaking Spurs an extra time for some reason. But how much you what do you think of that group first and foremost? How much you prioritizing the play-in tournament? The Kings made it out of the group stage last year. They got to do that again.
I think they got a great chance to do that. Like you said, we don't know when they're playing these games, but we do know the setup, right? And the two home games is Houston and Minnesota, so you don't have to go on the road for those games. You go to Los Angeles, which is a road game, which the Intuit Dome looks fantastic. But even with that being, it looks fantastic. But even with that said, Kings fans have been known to travel down to Los Angeles for that game, so it's that's going to be a little bit of a friendly environment, I believe. And I just, I don't put any stock in it as far as your ultimate goal of making the playoffs and being a championship team. But it is a lot of fun. And like you said, I am competitive. If there's something on the line, let's go get it. You know what I mean? And I think that's the way Mike Brown and his team approached it last year. And I think they'll do the same thing this year. So I think it's a good group for them. It's a good setup, a good draw with how they got the home games and things of that nature. And I think I said it when the draw happened. I'll say it right here on Locked On Kings. Kings are going back to the NBA Cup playoffs. Okay, book it. It's a fact. I've said it right here. I'm standing on business. Kings are going back to the tournament player, whatever you say, of the NBA Cup. Book it.
Take it a step further. You got your Vegas tickets yet? I mean,
I need to get them. I need to go. Oh man, bro! If the Kings go to Vegas in that Final Four, best believe I will be in the building. Yes.
Sacramento coming and taking over Vegas in the middle of the wintertime or right in like December or whatever it is would be pretty funny. But I mean, hey, also people forget the play-in tournament all the way up until the final two rounds. It counts towards the regular season. So, like, if you don't have the motivation of winning because you think the NBA Cup is dumb, okay, you're trying to make the playoffs. Every game in the West matters. You're going to be like all these games count towards the regular season. So find a way, especially if you got the Rockets and you got the Clippers in your group. No disrespect to the Clippers. I just expect the Kings to be better than them. Like you gotta go out and win those games. So we'll have to wait and see with that. Well, KC, I think we're all just staring at the calendar like paint drying, waiting for this thing to get started. We're all very excited for October, even training camp in early October, late September, man. I can't wait for those storylines around that. We didn't even get the chance to talk about like starting lineups and stuff like that, which is going to be a huge debate. So we'll have to have you back on when we're discussing that around training camp time. I appreciate you, my man, taking 30 minutes out of your day to do this while also doing a 4-hour radio show on top of that. You the man. Check out D-Lo and KC, ESPN 1320, noon to 4 if you don't already, Monday through Friday. Plus, y'all on 95.7, or not 95.7 the game. What is it, 102.5? I mean,
102.5.
They're everywhere. They're all over Sacramento.
If you want to hear more Sexy Red, tune into 102.5 KSFM, D-Lo and KC. Yeah.
KC will never stop playing Sexy Red. And every time.
I like Sexy Red. She's funny.
Every time they play that instrumental inside of the Golden One Center, I think of you and I think of Brendan Nunez. So you can't get rid of it. KC, thank you so much, man.
No problem, man. Anytime, big dog.